Multiplayer games, by their very definition, require multiple players. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk on multiplayer games. It sounds simple, but in reality the idea of 2 or more people playing the same game together across the world still feels like weird space magic. Games like Fortnite and Call of Duty manage to bring in millions of players every month, but there's more than a few multiplayer games that could be considered dead on arrival. It's natural for multiplayer games to experience a limited shelf life as players move on to other games as time passes, but some just aren't given the chance to succeed in the first place. Whether through lackluster sales and reception, a lack of publicity before launch, awful game quality, or some other combination of reasons beside, some games are only fit to be considered as dead on arrival. Here's a selection of some of our favourites. They're not in any order, but they are pretty dead. We are not including Battleborn, because that game was tied to the back of the Overwatch car and dragged along in its rear view mirror through broken glass for 5 years before it was finally, belatedly put out of its misery. Before then though, if you could please slap the like button and smash the subscribe, we promise to let you die when your time comes and not keep trying to resurrect you like the Culling. Please, just place a pillow over its face. Dead Alliance. Seriously, if you remember this game, congratulations, you are in an elite group of like 5 or 6 people. You might be wondering what the hell Dead Alliance is, but honestly you're probably better off not knowing. One of those games that ambitiously tries to create the PvPvE scenarios, Dead Alliance is set during a zombie post-apocalypse where military bases have become cities. Players will compete against other teams for control of objectives, trying to use the zombies as a weapon, as you do. It sounds decent, in concept, but in action, Dead Alliance is an incredibly ropey and unsatisfying game to play, with little in the way of promotion ahead of launch, and an awful multiplayer beta that exposed the game's litany of issues. Dead Alliance was rather fittingly dead not long after launch. It'd be a shame, but developers Illphonic are seemingly undeterred by dead multiplayer games. Friday the 13th died through no fault of their own, but then there's the next game. Predator: Hunting Grounds. Once again, it's a bit weird to describe a game as dead on arrival when there's been post-launch patches and updates to try and stop the bleeding. Unfortunately, Predator: Hunting Grounds' lukewarm critical reception and seeming lack of large mainstream sales have ensured that the game is certainly not long for this world. There seems to be a cult fan base for the game, sure, but Illphonic had to have been expecting better. It's a shame considering that the Predator IP has yet to see a game that really makes the most of the terrifying potential that one of movies' greatest monsters has to offer. Concrete Jungle was a janky mess of a game, while the AVP games never really had the staying power you'd hope for. Playing as a Predator taking down a team of players as Marines seems like a natural fit for the game, but Hunting Grounds just isn't the ideal version of that vision. Right, now that we're here, let's utilise Predator's appearance in Fortnite and commission a Concrete Jungle 2 for PS5 and actually give it a budget of more than £200 this time. Rocket Arena. One of the biggest aspects that can contribute to a game being dead on arrival is whether or not the pricing of the game is correct, and Rocket Arena just didn't seem like it was worth the entry fee. A non-conventional multiplayer shooter, Rocket Arena tasks players with knocking each other off maps instead of blowing each other into smithereens. It's a different take, but one that could have been effective. However, Rocket Arena launched with a £25 price tag with the promise of battle passes and post-launch content, while looking not too dissimilar to games like Fortnite, leaving many to wonder why they'd pay the entry fee when there's other games out there for free. This frosty reception has led to huge price cuts for the game, and it's now available as part of the EA Play subscription service, which is usually a bad sign for a live service multiplayer game. Perhaps the Game Pass Ultimate integration with EA Play will stave off the Reaper a little longer, but Rocket Arena was pronounced dead on the scene even if it manages to be revived. Now all eyes are on Knockout City, EA's next attempt at a weird multiplayer game that looks like it got lost on the way towards 2016. Earthfall. It's not just competitive games that are susceptible to DOA status. Co-op games are just as likely. If you ever felt like playing a bad version of Left 4 Dead, Earthfall seems like just the ticket. Swapping the zombie virus for an alien invasion, Earthfall sees up to 4 players trying to take down waves of weird extraterrestrials, though your patience will likely wear thin before the enemy count does. In fairness, Earthfall did have 1 or 2 interesting ideas. The concept of 3D printing weapons and defences in order to survive a world overrun with aliens is pretty cool and likely realistic, but the core gameplay was so shoddy and laborious to play that the overall experience suffered as a result. Poor reviews and the fact it was a barely promoted new IP asking for near enough full price meant Earthfall died a death on launch. We've had quite a few imitators to Left 4 Dead over the years, but Earthfall had perhaps the biggest fall of all. Well, apart from this next one, Overkill's The Walking Dead. Another zombie game, Overkill's take on the Walking Dead series was due to be another horde-based co-op shooter, with Overkill and Starbreeze's experience on the Payday series building hype for the game's release. Then, the game launched on PC in November 2018, and the reception to the game was so negative that Skybound, the rights holder for The Walking Dead, cut all ties with Starbreeze in February 2019. The game's widespread derision also led to the game's planned console ports also being cancelled, which is a special kind of dead on arrival that's only really to be topped by one other game. We'll get to that one in a second. But for being plagued by technical issues, straight up boring gameplay, and going a bit underkill, if that's even a word, on the content, Overkill's The Walking Dead was dead on arrival. The Walking Dead's failure has led to a number of financial difficulties at Starbreeze, but apparently they're hard at work on Payday 3, so not all bad news, eh? Really, the best thing about this game was the sweet CGI trailers. Just watch those instead. The Culling 2. Oh god, The Culling 2. We're dredging up that corpse again. If there's ever a game that dropped dead quicker than it walked through the door, it's The Culling 2. The sequel to The Culling, one of the forefathers of the Battle Royale genre, TC2 managed to launch and subsequently be delisted within a couple of days as there simply wasn't enough players populating the servers to even fill up a lobby. In the game's brief lifespan, there was only an estimated handful of proper matches total. A few days later, the game was delisted from all available platforms. While the first game was portrayed as a game show battle experience not too dissimilar to the Hunger Games, The Culling 2 felt more like an ill-conceived knockoff of PUBG and H1Z1. When you sacrifice a core part of a franchise's identity to chase an established trend, you're setting yourself up for failure, and fail The Culling 2 certainly did. Nowadays, Xavians are spending their days charging players a fee to have matches in the relaunch version of the original game, a move that was widely ridiculed. Please, developers, let it die. Take it out back and shoot it. The Culling doesn't deserve this fate. Evolve. There's a couple of games on this list that have tried to emulate the success of Left 4 Dead, the fantastic zombie co-op shooter from Turtle Rock, but even the mighty developers of that game aren't immune to putting out dead on arrival games, as their last title, Evolve, felt like it crashed and burned. With all the hype of the Left 4 Dead series behind them, Turtle Rock sought to redefine multiplayer with an asymmetrical experience, but the results just didn't match up. One of the first instances of the 4v1 multiplayer genre, Evolve saw a team of 4 hunters attempt to track down and kill a monster controlled by another player. It was an ambitious game, but the characters lacked identity and the overall gameplay balance left something to be desired. Monsters were designed to level up as the match progressed, but if monsters happened to get caught by hunters early on, they were dead. Throw those issues together with a host of additional DLC that was released, which led to plenty of negative reviews on Steam, and players began to leave in droves. While Evolve hung on for a while, attempting a free-to-play relaunch over a year after it came out, the game never recovered. Servers were then shut down in 2018. Crucible. Proof that just because Amazon has a lot of money doesn't mean they can just force their way into the gaming industry, Crucible was a multiplayer game that saw multiple small teams compete to complete the same objective, with different characters offering various abilities that players would have to mix and match to complement each other. That might sound interesting, but it also sounds a lot like Overwatch and Team Fortress, at least when it comes to utilising varied heroes anyway. Crucible had actually been in development since 2014, but the game finally received a public release in May of last year. However, due to fan feedback on a lot of the game's core design, plus a dwindling player base only a month after launch, Crucible unreleased, going back into closed beta. A few months later, development on Crucible had ceased completely, with staff at Relentless Studios earmarked to help with the development of Amazon's massive multiplayer online New World. Hopefully it fares much better than Crucible did, but considering these giant corporations are just kinda chucking money into a vending machine and hoping a good game pops out, maybe err on the side of caution. Umbrella Corps. What the hell is it with Capcom trying to turn the Resident Evil series into some kind of multiplayer franchise? There was Resident Evil 5 and 6, with 5 containing some Versus DLC and 6 being, well, 6. There was also Resistance, the asymmetrical multiplayer experience that came bundled with Resident Evil 3, and Capcom are also launching RE-Verse, a multiplayer shooter coming bundled with Resident Evil 8. None managed to set the world alight, but perhaps the biggest disaster in the series is Umbrella Corps. Another competitive multiplayer shooter that happens to feature zombies as a threat, and also just generally another zombie game, Umbrella Corps was lambasted as a needless addition to a franchise that frankly collects needless additions like their postcards. People still collect postcards, right? Earning mockery not just for being a far cry from the series players love so much, Umbrella Corps just wasn't that much fun to play, leading to the game being abandoned pretty soon after launch. Fingers crossed, RE-Verse isn't heading down the same path. Gotham City Imposters. Remember this? PvP Batman. Anyone? Hello? Hello? The Batman franchise has been home to some multiplayer haunts in the past. If you remember that Arkham Origins had a multiplayer mode, then you get today's gold star, but right now we're talking about Gotham City Imposters, a game that saw the citizens of Gotham take on the mantle of Batman or the Joker and wage war on the streets. It was an intriguing idea that launched on the Xbox Live Arcade, PlayStation Network and Games for Windows Live, and that's probably what spelled disaster for the game. Games for Windows Live is a known disaster at this point, but back in 2012 there wasn't much in the way of downloadable multiplayer hits on the Xbox 360 and PS3. If you wanted multiplayer that was less likely to be dead, you were shelling out for a more mainstream game. Gotham City Imposters launched in February 2012, and by August the game went free to play on PC and received no new updates. We actually remember playing this on Xbox 360 when it came out, but after a week or so we'd moved on. Seems like everyone else did too. And there you have it, 10 multiplayer games that were dead on arrival. Did you play any of these games? Did you enjoy the list? Did you agree with the list? Anything you would have moved around? Is there anything you feel that we might have missed out? Please do sound off in the comments down below. And once again, if you did enjoy the video, please hit that like button, consider subscribing to the channel and tapping on that notification bell so you don't miss all future content from the Cultured Vultures YouTube channel. Please do also consult all the other social medias on screen, including, of course, the Cultured Vultures website, culturedvultures.com, and hopefully there you will find many things to your liking. We hope to see you in the next video, but until then, cuckoo.